Welcome to Forging a Life podcast with Coach Christine Clark. Forging a Life is a Sunglow Transformation production aired on Transformation Talk Radio and all your favorite podcast platforms. If you own a business, have a side hustle, desire to make the leap into self-employment, or just love human interest stories, Forging a Life podcast is for you. Christine Clark is an internationally certified transformational life coach. She is the coach for your entrepreneurial life, and these are her people. Jump into the fire with those forging success on their own terms with courage, tenacity, and resilience. These are men and women you could easily meet on the street in your own community. Gain wisdom, insight, knowledge, and inspiration each episode as these business owners get transparent with Coach Christine Clark, sharing their passions, challenges, and origin stories. This is Forging a Life.
Hello, this is Coach Christine Clark. This is Forging a Life, and my guest today is Paul Van Cleave with JP Party Rentals, which started out 5 years ago with some bounce houses, but now has over 150 rentable items. They serve the Des Moines metro area, and I am delighted to have you here with me today, Paul. Thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
You are most welcome. Tell me just a little bit. What I know about your background is you went into ministry. So tell us a little bit about that journey and how do you get from minister to bounce houses?
That is a question I get all the time. Coming out of high school, I went into Bible college and knew I had a call in my life to serve a generation of youth. And so I graduated with a degree in youth ministry from Central Bible College. And while I was there in school, I pioneered a youth ministry and led that for 4 years and saw great things happen, then transitioned back home to Des Moines. And after youth pastoring for another 4 years and serving in a local church as a lead pastor for a while, I'd always been discussing and exploring options to do something outside of the box, to start a business or even to do ministry in a unique way that's not confined to the four walls of a church. That had also always been kind of in the back of my mind and in my heart to do something unique and creative. And it was through doing nonprofit work and doing family events in the community. We had rented some bounce houses for one of those events that we did for free. And when those arrived, we took a look at them and we're like, man, we could do this. We could do this someday. And so it took a few years after that epiphany to have the opportunity, and I believe the opportunity was directly from God. It was a perfect opportunity for us, a great deal to buy a business out of Minneapolis, and so we took the leap, and the rest is history.
Yeah, so it was March of 2015. You went up to Minneapolis and brought home 5 or 6 items, couple bounce houses.
Yep. So we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into, which is funny because it's a whole different story when you rent bounce houses and then you go and pull a U-Haul up to Minnesota to pick up 4 bounce houses and 1 with a slide and get instructed at night in the person's driveway on how to roll one of them up, get all the paperwork, and load up the U-Haul and drive back the 4 hours back to Des Moines just with a dream in your heart, not much knowledge in your head yet, but just a hunger and inspiration to bring joy to people's lives and what kind of a company we wanted to build. So
yeah, that is so fun. That is really cool. Yeah, because when you order one, other people come and they set it up for you.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure there's a learning curve about how to set them up, or can you be on a hill? Probably not. Getting all the air out so they roll up and fit back in. I know when I open something, take it out of the box, it never goes back in the box the way it came out. So yeah, a lot of fun. So tell me just a little bit about how you started, what some of your first events were, and if there's any stories to go along with that.
Well, we started out and set all of them up in my mother-in-law's backyard. She has a lot of land in her backyard. So we set them all up and invited some friends and family over to take a look at them. And I remember setting up the first one in her driveway and just thinking, what have we gotten ourselves into, when we saw it fully inflated? And we thought, man, these are a lot bigger than we remember. And so that first moment of having them all up and taking those pictures and having friends over, there's such a satisfaction of, man, okay, these are ours now. What can we do with these? Our first year, we didn't have very many events. We started off really slow. There was an unexpected death in my business partner's family. He's my brother-in-law. And so very unexpected and tragic. So we kind of didn't do anything with the business for a period of time and had a really rough first year, obviously just learning a whole lot. Inflatables have to be inspected by the state. And so I remember when the inspector came, we had no idea what to expect. So we had to send someone on errands to go get the right size of stakes to drive it to the ground based on what he's telling us. And but starting in year 2 is when we started to be a part of people's parties, their backyard events, birthday parties. I could share so many stories of setting up at a daycare, and while kids are watching on the other side of the fence, chanting bouncy house, as we inflate the thing.
Like a rock star, right?
Yeah. You don't forget that. Or being a part of some weddings or festivals, and something we don't take for granted, the fact that it's not just a transaction or a product. People are trusting us to be a part of the biggest moments of their lives, or moments that we can help create lasting memories, to take it past just a birthday surprise to something that hopefully these kids will remember, or families will go to a festival together and it'll stick out in those young minds for the rest of their lives.
Right. It always is when we would go to this event, and there would always be the bounce house, and the kids would always play in it until they got too big. Yeah. So what were and are the audacious goals, and how far has the dream come for you?
Well, I have recently, since we started this business, it's funny, my wife was a huge fan of Mickey Mouse, even till she graduated high school. And I like to tease her. She has a senior picture with a bunch of Mickey Mouse items and memorabilia around her. And so she has a senior picture surrounded by Mickey Mouse. And I was never a big fan, but once we started this business, obviously just looking for inspiration and people who have changed industries, I was really inspired by Walt Disney. So I kind of joke that I want to be the Walt Disney here in Iowa, in the Midwest. We'd love to be the number one source for family entertainment in our area. We know that there's a stigma with the bounce house guys. You just kind of expect them to show up and just be kind of like a carny. And I think what we're looking for is just to branch out into other areas to bring entertainment. So since starting out with 5 inflatables that were completely paid for, what we've been trying to do is set goals, to obviously financial goals, but goals to grow the right way, to not sink ourselves into debt, to add attractions the right way and look to what will meet needs. And so that's always been an inspiration to us. We've been willing to take some chances and get some unique items that nobody else around has, that are maybe a lot larger than we should have had. And we got one obstacle course I'll never forget. It's 1,500 pounds. It's,
oh my goodness.
Just enormous. And we got it, and we were so excited to blow it up. So once again, revisit mother-in-law's backyard.
Right.
We get it set up, and everyone's playing on it. It's super unique. It was wonderful. It was a blast to play on. Then the sun starts to set, and Jordan, my business partner, and I, we both realized, all right, we have to take this down and it's starting to get dark, and we have no idea how to fold it or roll it or anything, and it's huge. So we took down, there's 2 sections, and it was absolutely hilarious. We had to use the headlights on his Honda Civic to light the inflatable as we're trying to roll this thing up, and we can't even get it on the dolly, the hand cart, to roll it into the garage. We had to roll it all the way up like a football practice. It was absolutely insane, but something I'll never forget, that's how new we were and had no idea what we were doing, but we had a dream and checked off a goal. We knew that in order to meet the needs of people and provide that entertainment, you have to take risks and you have to get something that nobody else will go for. And I mean, that's such a big life lesson. Sometimes you have to take a leap that no one else is willing to take in order to get to what you want to be or where you want to go or what you want to have.
Absolutely. I'm thinking about, you said 1,500 pounds, even in 2 sections. You know, that's over 700 pounds. I mean, you actually, I can see you guys, you know, like you said, football practice, rolling this thing.
Yeah.
But can you actually get it picked up to, I mean, how do you load it into the truck or the van?
You know, it's funny because inflatables is what we do right now. Obviously, it's not the end all, but every big inflatable that we've gotten has started off. I remember when we got about a 600-pound, 22-foot tall slide. And Jordan and I thought that was just impossible to roll. And every time we did it, we knew, okay, if we can just get over this hump in the vinyl, that's where it's all bunched up. It'll be smooth sailing from there. But it was so hard to do. In fact, one of our first ones, I said we got 4 bounce houses and one with the slide. That only weighs about 350 pounds. I say only.
Right.
But it was much the same. When we were rolling that up in a backyard, we felt like if we can just get past the slide section and where this is bunched up, we're going to be fine. And then graduate to that 22-foot slide. But the more you do it, the more you get used to it. You persevere and you learn. You learn better techniques. We were at a festival with our 22-foot slide, and once we were taking that down, you know, the light bulb goes on at random moments in life, and we took a step back and looked at it and said, man, we've been doing this a lot harder than we have to. And there on the street at this small town in Iowa, we figured it out a lot better, and it was way easier after that. So much the same with our 1,500-pound toxic drop inflatable.
What, a
1,500-pound, that obstacle course is called the toxic drop.
Toxic drop, okay.
So with that one, practice makes perfect. Whereas it started off, we were thinking we needed a crew of 7 guys in order to set that up anywhere. Now we can do it with 2 just fine.
Yeah, so that's, you know, in any business, hands-on, there's learning. You figure it out, figure out the tricks and the techniques and the tweaks, and yeah, when you have those epiphanies, it's like, oh, hey, wait, if we do this instead of that, yeah, that's part of the growth process, which is beautiful. You said that you and your brother-in-law, who is Jordan, right?
Correct.
Yeah, had looked at a lot of different things before you ended up actually jumping into bounce houses. Why bounce houses? What was it that clicked? Because, you know, obviously you're having this desire to do some entrepreneurial vein of some sort, and I don't know how many years you probably rolled things around, talked about this, talked about that. What was the catalyst to step into this particular industry?
Honestly, I think it really was birthed out of doing those events with our nonprofit organization and my background in ministry and always wanting to bring joy to people's lives. And I remember instances in my childhood that weren't a huge deal, but it was something that just added a little bit of magic to my life and a little whimsy. We wanted to be a part of that. I also know that it was just an opportunity that presented itself. And so it's funny that we talked about everything from opening a laundromat to miniature golf to anything. And I'd be lying to say that those possibilities aren't things that we still consider. And we still discuss new options and new avenues now. But now we have a filter to go through to where we're in the entertainment industry. This is what we love doing. We love the looks on people's faces. I say nobody can drive by or pass by an inflatable without double taking. I don't think it's possible. Even adults, if you're driving down the street and you see one off the road at a church or somewhere, everyone will double take and wonder what's going on over there. And so those are moments that we've come to love. It kind of came about on accident. I think it was really out of that event that we did where we rented some. And then we both got good tax returns and decided, well, now's the time to start doing something. And through finding it, and I don't think those things happen by accident. I did use that word, but
if you were going to rephrase that, how would you rephrase that?
Divine appointment, if I could be so bold.
Absolutely.
Because I believe that the opportunity was just amazing. It was perfect. To be able to buy 5 of them at once, a whole business, and the guy being so wonderful to us, and launching that with a bite-sized chunk, it was intimidating, of course, but if we had started with anything more than that, I think we would have been overwhelmed. And with one, we wouldn't have been able to get off the ground. It was just the perfect opportunity. We've kind of continued to grow that way. What is something that people want? What is something people need? Requests that we get? Well, then we evaluate each one by one. We're going to continue doing that no matter what we find ourselves in next.
Tell me, what are the things that you have? Because you've said, start out with bounce houses, but you said 150 items. So give us an idea about the variety of what your business offers right now.
So we started with those bounce houses, and now we have a mechanical bull. In fact, we just last weekend went and picked up a motorcycle attachment for that mechanical bull. So instead of riding a bull, you can ride an 8-foot motorcycle on it, and that will be what's spinning and bucking. And it's one of only 12 in the country, we've learned. So we're excited for that. So that's kind of on our higher end. We have a couple other mechanical inflatable items, a bunch of obstacle courses, concessions items such as popcorn, cotton candy, and spin art is one that I was really excited to get into because I just mentioned there were some moments in my childhood that really stand out to me still at 36. And I remember my parents doing staycations for us every once in a while, picking us up from school and already having some clothes packed for us. And they would take us to the Crystal Inn, which is now a Holiday Inn over by the airport in Des Moines. It had the dome, and the pool was over there. And on some Saturdays, they would do family days and whatnot, and they would have spin art there. And to this day, I remember going to Toys R Us before going to the hotel, getting something special for no reason, and going and enjoying swimming, learning how to swim in that pool. I remember that, and doing spin art and getting to take home my creation. So that was a special one for me when we got into spin art, and we have Frisbee spin art. To be able to bring those, I often share that story that something so simple as a cardboard card with some paint splattered on it, who knows, kids may be talking about it for the next 27 years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As you talk about that, I came across this past year, maybe 12 months ago, spin art that my sons had done at the Iowa State Fair. The one that my older son, Ben, did, it was a unique piece. Spin art's just spin art, but there was something about it. And the way as you turned the card, I could see different images in it. And so I ended up framing that and giving it to him
That's awesome.
as a gift. And like you said, spin art sticks with them, sticks with kids. And it is a memory. And then you have that to take home. You have that to hang on to. So you guys are like a whole carnival in and of itself. Popcorn, cotton candy, spin art, all the bounce houses and all the different rides, I guess, what I would call them. But so what's the biggest event you've done? How much did you set up all at once?
Well, we work with a local college here in Des Moines area, and every October they do a big event, and we set up 13 to 15 items, and it's for college students and high school upperclassmen. So they're not getting bounce houses.
Right.
So it's all of our biggest items that are the most work, but seeing those spread across 2 fields is just a special thing. So that's probably our biggest in terms of how many inflatables are set up at once. But we've worked with some great people. We've been a part of the Celebration Festival with the Iowa Asian Alliance, been a part of the Latino Heritage Festival. It's an honor to be a part of those kinds of events, working with schools for after proms. Of course, this past year, sadly, most schools weren't able to do that. Mm-hmm. But we're excited for 2021 to hopefully be able to provide that students will for sure remember for a long, long time. So those are kind of our bigger events. Another great relationship we have is with the Blank Park Zoo. And so our stuff is at Night Eyes every October for Halloween. So that's a fun one. We love working with them.
Talk to me about community.
There's such a need for community right now. I can't even begin to, I could talk about that for hours. This year has set people back so much, in my opinion. And of course, I don't want to get political or anything, but to have people so isolated right now is such a sad thing, especially for our industry, because of this is what we do. We love to bring people together. Mm-hmm. And to not have community events for the 4th of July is just heart-wrenching. I know that the effects of people being together, there's been scientific studies even on the benefits of human touch. That's why if you watch professional athletes in the NBA, that season is just kicking off. They give each other high fives all the time after every free throw, whether it's made or missed. They touch hands with everyone on their team. And there's been studies to show the benefits of doing so on increased performance and increased morale. It's the benefits of a hug and interaction. And to me, that spreads to community, to where when people come together to celebrate anything, there's such a positive ripple effect in that, which is our priority. We want families to play together to hopefully help them stay together, to help them create not just memories, but also standards for them. If these kids who are coming and having fun with our inflatables can grow up having those memories with mom and dad and remembering the joy that they felt and whatnot as part of a community as a whole, or their church organization or whomever is we're working with, hopefully they can grow up to be adults that understand the value of being together and being with family and having that foundation and passing that along. Hopefully we can turn some of the issues around in our country from being together.
Yeah, and spot on, all of that. From the life coach, psychology, part of it, we are hardwired for connection. At our roots, we are tribal. And there's so much good that comes from being in contact with other people. And I think that's maybe one of the things that we're not discussing in the current climate is the detriment that's happening emotionally, psychologically, physiologically, from not, from distancing and not engaging in that touch. So definitely important. And thank you for speaking to that. Yeah, community. And you're creating the memories and carrying that forward for those kids to share with their kids. I know that with, like the Iowa State Fair, there's some big events that are just their family tradition, as much as Christmas or Easter or anything like that. Yeah, it makes a difference. All the different types of events that you've done. You said weddings when we talked before. How does what you do fit into a wedding? It's
fun. That's actually kind of a growing trend right now. To me, it makes sense. I wish that people understood that, as I said previously, I think there's kind of a stigma or kind of a inflatables are intended for this purpose and they're intended for kids or whatnot. The attractions that we have, I'm a very sentimental and nostalgic person. Okay, so much. I remember being a kid. One of the things I told my wife I wanted for Christmas, when I was a young boy, they had the Land Before Time dinosaur puppets at Pizza Hut. And that's how nostalgic I am. I was thinking, man, I remember having those. And now I want those again, just to put on a shelf and remember. Mm-hmm. So I know that's pretty unique. I'm nostalgic to a fault. But if we can create that kind of whimsy in adults as well, and not just for children, I wonder what kind of society we'd live in if people would just allow themselves to have a moment of nostalgia or have a moment of whimsy and be kids again. So with weddings, I think it makes sense. People can have it for the kids to entertain themselves during the reception while the adults mingle and dance and enjoy themselves. But we've also had our inflatables at a funeral or celebration of life. And so I don't think it's limited to one type of event. I think people need that for different reasons and need that for different seasons of their life. And so there's no wrong time to have some entertainment that we can provide. So we're honored to be a part of those special moments. We don't take that for granted at all. Whenever I talk to a bride coming up on their wedding, it's very important to us to make sure that her special day is flawless and they don't have to worry about anything with the inflatable.
Wonderful. Tell me the story of the funeral.
So there was a little boy who lost his battle with sickness, and my understanding is prior to his death, he had written his own obituary, essentially, or what he had in mind for his birthday coming up. Yeah, I believe he was turning 5, or had just recently turned 5 years old. And so he had it all mapped out. He was going to have Batman there, and he was going to have a circus or a carnival, and he wanted 5 bounce houses. And it was this whole celebration. And sadly, he passed away before he could see this come to fruition. And we were approached, and we were honored to be able to donate 5 bounce houses to this celebration of life for him. And we have a picture of our 5 bounce houses up on a hill. And it's one of my favorite pictures. And it was actually turned into the cover of a children's book that we have a copy of. It's animated, but we know exactly which one each of those bounce houses are, and we have the real picture. And Batman was there. A great friend of ours with Iowa League of Heroes is Batman. And so that's just something you'll never forget. You'll never forget being a part of that. It goes so far beyond the bounce house or bounce houses. It's those cherished moments of something that meant so much to a family who was grieving, and to be a part of that. And it was wonderful. The anniversary the next year, that family reached out to us and they rented an inflatable again, and they rented an obstacle course from us to kind of honor that memory and have some fun as a family. So it was an opportunity to stay connected as well. We loved that.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful, Paul. Is this business of bounce houses, inflatables, I mean, you've talked about the bringing in the whimsy. Is this still ministry to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is always kind of what was in my heart, even when I was a student in Bible college. And I never thought I was going to look like this. And again, if I could be so bold, I've learned a lot after being a youth pastor at a church in a staff position, that I always thought from when I was called into ministry in middle school that I was called to be a youth pastor. That was what my job was going to be. And I've since learned that God doesn't call us to a position. He calls us to people. And I feel like I was called to love and serve people. And I had it twisted all those years to think that if I wasn't operating in the role of a youth pastor, I wasn't fulfilling my calling. And God has since shown me that, no, he's called me to a generation and to bless families. And this is very much ministry. And I've even been able to pray with some customers at their house. And when we're tearing things down, and grandma told us that she had recently been diagnosed with cancer and was just really struggling. And to be able to pray with her on site was such a unique experience. And I've said it a couple times, I believe, that we're being a part of the biggest moments in people's lives, whether it's a birthday party or it's a family reunion or it's a 4th of July celebration or a funeral. We're being a part of these big moments that people are coming together for. And what better opportunity to show the love of Jesus and to bring actual joy to people's lives instead of just a fun time. So absolutely still is.
What has been your biggest challenge? I mean, you've been in business 5 years, which is, you're off the ground. The statistics say, 75% of businesses don't make 5 years. So, you've crossed the line. But for you, what's the challenges?
2020. 2020. I haven't mentioned this whole time, but we also purchased a couple years ago an indoor play center that's been in the Des Moines area up in Ankeny for 14 years now, the playground for kids, and such a rich legacy there. Not many places like this last that long, for sure. 14 years is a long time for a play center, but the simplicity of it is what keeps it going. So we purchased it 2 years ago and have been having a blast running it and growing it and dreaming to reach people year round now instead of just in summer, and have families come to us. And that, I should also say, is a big portion of the ministry aspect of that. Whenever I open up the playground, I get here early and I pray, and I just pray that people would come and encounter joy, and that their anxiety that they're dealing with be replaced with joy and peace, and that it would be a place of rest for moms who need a break, but also from the stresses of life and worry, that they would just really feel lightness here. Mm-hmm. And so that has been probably our biggest challenge to date. Is this year we were forced to learn some lessons the hard way about we've been growing the right way and managing, not having to go into large amounts of debt, but we were so focused on growth to have to slam on the brakes unexpectedly and not being able to plan for it showed us that there's a season to grow aggressively and there's a season to pump the brakes a little bit and learn, okay, we need to manage well what we have and be good stewards of what we already have instead of always focus on the next thing. Having a lot more overhead now. When you have inflatables that you own, you can kind of put those wherever. And for the longest time, we operated out of our garages. But with the playground for kids, obviously, it's a facility. So there's a lot more overhead, and there's so many wonderful employees that we work with. And to be responsible for their well-being and their livelihoods, 2020 and everything having to close for 3 entire months at the playground, obviously, that's just a huge setback that we're still trying to recover from. And so definitely that's been the challenge of just learning the hard way, screeching halt, and learning how to pivot, how to grind through and stay motivated and stay persevering even when you're scared.
Yeah. One of the questions I wanted to ask you is, what has been the most, have you ever been scared or terrified? And the answer is yes, now.
Absolutely.
Right. Because you're, talk about pivot, but when you are shut down completely, the overhead's still there. Mm-hmm. Just there's no revenue coming in. Tell me about the grind. Tell me about the pivot. What things have you tried? And tell me that first. And then I want to ask, how do you keep yourself positive, because it would be so easy just to despair and to just, put a for sale sign on the play place and say, we're done. I can't handle this. So tell me first about, the grind and the pivoting.
So back in March, when things were just starting to ramp up with COVID, we closed preemptively at the Playground for Kids. We closed, I think, about a month before we were supposed to with our category, but we listened to the backlash that we were receiving for being open still, and our foot traffic had dropped so low, and we decided to close when gyms closed. We thought that's when we had to. And so we shut down, and I cried. It was so hard to have to go to the manager of a facility and one of my right-hand guys as well, and to sit them both down and say, okay, we have to lock up. At that time, if you remember, we kind of thought it was going to be for 2 weeks. Right. Everything was kind of in 2-week increments. Mm-hmm. And so then having to come back and extend that and extend it again and extend it again, you realize real quick that we have to do something. So we focused that time on completing a lot of projects that we had wanted to do. We had already purchased previously the supplies to do so at the playground. And so we knew we could give the place a little bit of a facelift that we had always planned on. And that also could keep our staff busy a little bit. And so we pivoted that way to kind of try and make the place better when we reopened, and to still try and do some backyard events when kids weren't allowed to go back to school. We knew they're isolated. They can't be with their friends. If we can bring a bounce house to a backyard still, then we can still bring a little bit of joy to their lives, and they can get some exercise and get out of the house a little bit. Well, that didn't really work because we didn't want to advertise too much and offend people. It was such a precarious situation to toe that line. So one idea that I had and ran with was we make popcorn here at the playground, and we have cotton candy. So I sold and delivered bags of cotton candy and popcorn to people's homes and did contactless delivery. And they would just text me their orders. And I tell you, I kept coming to work. And I would sit in a dark facility and do a lot of praying and just a lot of brainstorming and trying to be busy and stay focused as much as I could on, we have to come out of this at some time. So how are we going to come out of this? And so going there to work and making at one point over 200 bags of treats to take. And I drove them all over the place. And it was so funny to tell people I'm delivering cotton candy. But it was a way to stay connected. It's a way to still be in the community and to be there for people. And it provided income when we needed it really badly. We pivoted on the rental side into tables and chairs. And so when people started getting together or doing their weddings again, but they couldn't do it in the venue, now people needed to do it in their backyard. And so we provided tables and chairs to people. So little areas like that where we could pivot into things that weren't necessarily inflatables was a way to keep going. I told our staff not to waste the opportunity. We didn't want to waste it, the time off. How can we grow through it? So we're on the other side. We get to decide what our new normal is. And I still hate that term, but to think about it in terms of, okay, if it's a time to stretch and a time to grow, we get to dictate what that looks like. And so don't waste the opportunity of downtime. Grow as a person in the meantime. So
yeah. Stay at choice. Yeah. And that's huge. That is huge. Showing up every day, showing up to an empty facility. When you talked about when you had the traffic before the shutdown, about praying in the facility at the beginning of the day, I've been a part of a lot of really large events, and we would gather up all the service people that were part of the team that made the event go. We didn't call it praying, but we called it setting intention. just to set the energy for the room. And same kind of thing, wishing everybody that was coming into the event that they would find what they were looking for, and that everything would flow well, and that we would deliver. But I remember that piece. I have that image of you, though, with the shutdown, showing up to an empty place, but keep showing up, encouraging your staff to make the most of it. It's not what we wanted, it's not what we chose, it's what life threw at you.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there's still opportunity in that.
Absolutely.
That's huge. That is really huge. That's fantastic.
Well, you had asked me about what motivates me. If you don't mind my jump into that.
Perfect. Yeah.
So the importance of staying motivated and not wasting opportunity, even when you're still terrified. I'm still terrified. I came in this morning and was praying because we're still struggling. But something that I've introduced to our staff almost 2 years ago, and I was privileged to do one of our former manager's weddings this year. I was able to officiate her wedding, and I even used it in the ceremony. Is our mission statement before, or our slogan for the year was "Everyone counts," and it's a concept that I'm passionate about. I want to write a book on it. That everyone, not meaning every person, but everyone counts. Every moment, every transaction, every interaction, every day, every moment. A couple years ago, now actually, it's about 2 years ago to the day, I was diagnosed with heart failure. And so being 34 years old at that time and diagnosed with systolic heart failure woke me up and really shined a light on the fact that every breath counts. Everything you say counts. We live in a culture right now that is obsessed with the word matters. I think a problem with that is matters is so subjective. It's just true. What matters to you may be the most important thing to you, but it may not be the most important thing to me, and it doesn't matter as much to me. Everyone counts. So every decision we make, whether it matters to someone else or not, it counts. And it's either going to count positively or it's going to count negatively. Every word you speak to your children or to your spouse or to a friend or a loved one, it counts. You can't get them back. You don't get do-overs. It's when my son will try and show me something that he's been working on. And if he can't do it, even though he's done it 3 times in a row practicing for that moment, if he's trying to show me and he says, "Oh, that didn't count. I get it. Let me try again." We kind of treat life like that sometimes and say, "Oh, that didn't count. It did count. You don't get a do-over." Those words you spoke, they did count, and they mattered in somebody's life for positive or negative impact. Every customer that comes through our door counts, and how we treat them counts. You don't get to do it over. You only get one shot. Every transaction, every word, every kiss, every hug, they all count. They all count for something. And the magnitude of that definitely keeps us going in this kind of an industry that, especially in a year that not a lot was able to happen, every opportunity we get, it counts for something in somebody's life. And we don't know how much that matters to them. We can only guess how much it matters to us. But regardless of that scale, it counts.
Right.
Every single time.
I love that, Paul. Everyone counts. And what I hear in that for you, especially through this 2020, is it's also a way of staying in gratitude, staying in motion. Mm-hmm. When there is so much less to count, if you're looking at foot traffic, knowing everyone counts, that you're making the most on recognizing what is present, what is there, what is happening, which naturally helps you manage it. It can keep you afloat. One of the things I work with people is, what are they looking at? What are they focusing on? And I like that. Everyone counts. as far as all your interactions, making the most of life, one piece at a time, but also having appreciation for everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Absolutely.
huge. That's huge. That is very cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's the future look like for you? What do you see? What are your plans?
Well, we are looking forward to 2021, even in the midst of uncertainty, and hoping that we can look. It's hilarious that it's 2020 because hindsight is 2020, and so when we can look at this year in the rearview mirror and take from it what we can as inspiration and life lessons, but looking forward to a new year and new events. We're just talking to some high schools today that are optimistic about having their after prom event and whatnot. We're excited to just get back into the community, whatever that looks like, and also always exploring opportunities. I would love to have our own venues soon to be able to do our own events and to bring people together for our purposes and to share the joy kind of when we want to and how we want to. And who knows, down the road, we have some big ideas to bring people together ourselves, provide space for people. So we'll see if that comes to fruition, but I'm believing it will.
That sounds fun because you are called into service to provide for other people's event celebrations, but to create your own event, your own venue, and invite people in. That sounds exciting. That sounds like a lot of fun.
And now I just spoke it out loud.
Yes.
And I've learned that once you say it out loud, you're instantly accountable. So
it is. And, we're going to share this with a significant portion of the world, Paul. So you're on the hook.
Here we go.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Good job. Good job. Anything else that you'd want to share with the people who are listening, either from point of view from an entrepreneur doing business or from your background as a pastor?
Well, as an entrepreneur, I would say, to go back to that question everyone asked me, why bounce houses? Why inflatables? And if you have a dream or an inspiration that doesn't make sense, even a lot of times to you, that doesn't mean it's not valid, and it doesn't mean that it may not have been birthed from God, and it's a purpose for you and not just an idea, to go for it. And even when it doesn't make sense, and even when you're sitting all alone in a dark facility and you question why you showed up that day, to keep going for it, because at the end of the day, you're pursuing something that matters. And that day counted, and it will count for what you're pushing for. So don't give up, even when you want to, with everything in you. Instead, take a little time off, go to a movie, find some inspiration around you, and get back on the saddle. Know that there's a God in heaven that loves you, and you do matter, and he showed that 2,000 years ago. And what better time than Christmas to think about Jesus coming to earth and the fact that he came to be a sacrifice for humanity. And I believe that with all my heart. And I know that right now it's such a time that people need purpose and they need peace in the midst of absolute chaos. I've never lived through anything like this in my life. And there's hope out there. There really is. There's joy out there. And the Bible says the joy of the Lord is our strength. And so that's something we're trying to do with our company. And we hope to be a part of people's lives again in the coming year, and to bring a little bit of that joy and light to your situation. And just know to keep your head up. There is light at the end of darkness, and joy comes in the morning.
Lovely. Thank you for that, Paul. Thank you for that. Yeah. Even when you're sitting alone in the dark, it doesn't mean that your choice was wrong. It doesn't mean that this isn't what you're supposed to be doing. Yep. Got to hang in there. Absolutely. Absolutely. Good job. Good job. My guest today has been Paul Van Cleave with JP Party Rentals. You can find Paul and all the party rentals at jppartyrentals.com. You can also find the Playground for Kids. That is theplaygroundforkids.com for their space in Ankeny. Paul loves to meet with people one-on-one, to plan your events, to just chat and connect. And you can call him at 515-444-2302. Paul, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been my pleasure, and I've enjoyed every minute.
Wonderful. Thank you. Hello, this is Coach Christine Clark. The conversation with Paul Van Cleave was just fun and rich. And throughout our conversation, there were pieces where Paul was talking, and I thought, oh, this is so good. This is so rich. So I want to pull out some of those pieces and just highlight them. At the beginning of our conversation, he talked about driving the 4 hours home with a U-Haul full of bounce houses, a dream in the heart, and not much knowledge in your head. And I thought, yes, that's how we go into business. When we are inspired, we have this thing that we're excited about, and we dive in. And we know that this is what we want to do. There's a lot of enthusiasm, but there isn't much knowledge. Even if it's something that you've been doing for a while, when you switch the gear to make it from a hobby or a sideline or something you do just for you to something that you're going to monetize, there's so much learning that happens. That's how they started, and I think that's how most of us start, how we want to start business. Later, Paul talked about growing the right way. For them, that meant not going into a huge amount of debt and to meet the needs of their clients as well as the needs for their business growth. And when we do goal setting, I think that's one of the pieces that we overlook. It's something I know I've overlooked. Not just that what the goal is, but how I want to grow, how I want to proceed, and to be able to put parameters on what is going to be acceptable for risk, what is going to be acceptable for the amount of effort, what fits with your lifestyle, what fits with your values. And those are really critical pieces to include when you're looking at your business plan. I loved the ease with which Paul was able to articulate that. It was just rock solid. I also appreciated when Paul had the candor to talk about he never thought his ministry would look like this. When early on he had a decided idea about how that call was to come to fruition, and realized later that he had it all twisted up. It wasn't a role he was called to, it was serving people. And all of us in entrepreneurship are serving the world in some fashion, and we're called to provide our piece to serve others. And part of the beautiful growth process of becoming who we are meant to be, doing what we're meant to do, is that it changes and it morphs and it shifts. And as we get more knowledge and have more understanding and get more experience under our belt, sometimes that ideal that we started out with is not at all what it ends up looking like. And it's something better. It's something more real. It's something more authentic. And that's a really beautiful part of diving into entrepreneurship, is you get to find that out about yourself and about what you're doing. I love what Paul talked about as their experience for 2020, and I think it reflects what so many of us experienced this last year. For them, they were focused on growth. They had to slam on the brakes and shift to being good stewards of what they had, to take the time to do the facelift for the facility while the play place was closed, and to keep coming to work. The image of him sitting in an empty playground for kids, showing up day after day, is poignant. How many of us felt like we were in that dark spot and showing up anyway with nothing to do, our business being shut down, our business being delayed? And what I want us to understand is the strength that we accumulated operating in a crucible of high uncertainty, severe anxiety, and downright unfathomable fear, that we pivoted, that we came up with solutions, ways to stay in motion. We got creative, and it was a push. But when you look at what you've accomplished, what you were able to do in this year of total disruption, I want you to be able to see the gladiator in that. I want you to be able to see the hero in that, what you are capable of under duress, and how much that proves your worth. That's the important piece, that you now have a higher level of acumen, a higher level of understanding about who you are and what you're capable of than ever before. And that's worth carrying forward into 2021. This is Coach Christine Clark, and this is Forging a Life.